On today's episode, head coach Bo Ryan talks about his Badgers' appearance in the national championship game in 2015 and his first national title at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville in 1991. Here we go. Good morning. What is up? Welcome to another segment of Survive and Thrive 8791. I'm your host, Coach Decorah. We are live from the Buck and Honey's remote studios high above University Avenue on the west side of Madison. You can follow the podcast on Instagram, Apple Music, and YouTube at Survive and Thrive 8791. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at tdecorah8791, as well as getting on my Facebook page at Tim Decorah. Glad you could join us today. Today, we're glad to have Coach Bo Ryan back on set for this episode of Survive and Thrive 8791. On Sunday night, October 13th, Coach Ryan will be inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. A college coach of 32 years. Did I get that right, Coach? 32 years?
Close to that, I'm sure.
Close to that.
Actually, 40 years, because you have to count junior high, high school, unless you're only counting college, of course.
No, we'll throw that in as well.
And as an assistant coach, right? You got those thrown in there. So actually, it was 40 years of service in the state of Wisconsin plus 2. The plus 2 was for the military.
Oh, nice.
Being an MP, spending 2 years, 69 to 71, protecting your safety. You weren't born then.
Thank you for your service, Coach. Coach retired in 2018 after leading the University of Wisconsin to back-to-back NCAA Final Fours, which included a spot in the 2015 National Championship game. Welcome back, Coach Ryan. You're back from an event in Philly.
Yeah.
Do you care to share?
Sure. It was nice. I was asked to come and speak at a luncheon, and the luncheon kind of turned into a semi-roast because Fran Dunphy was there. Fran Dunphy was the coach at Penn, LaSalle, Temple in the Big Five. He's a Philly guy all the way. I used to play against him in the summers and pickup games down at the Shore in Jersey, and Fran's a great guy. He's a great guy for the game, and he's done a lot of good things for Coaches versus Cancer, as well as the other guest that they had was Phil Martelli. Phil Martelli coached St. Joe's for many years. He and I had played against each other when he was at Widener College, when I was at Wilkes, and yes, we did win, and I had to remind him of that. But he got a few zingers in on me at the luncheon. But it was nice. I had some guys there that I hadn't seen in 40, 50 years. And they brought up some stories that I had forgotten about. But once they set the trigger off, a lot of memories came back. So it was really a good time. A lot of fun was had by all. And the guy who runs the museum, the sports museum in our neck of the woods in Delaware County, which is basically right outside of South Philly, there's a lot of guys who were there who have made a mark of their own in a lot of different ways. One of the guys was Glenn Robinson, who I had coached against for the national championship back in 1991, your senior year, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, the only thing that was missing was the guy who ran it. I thought for sure he was going to have hoagies or cheesesteaks, but he just had regular sandwiches. And Tim, that was disappointing.
I was going to say that might be a little bit sacrilegious. You go to Philly, you're expecting a Philly cheesesteak, not ham and cheese.
No question.
Yeah. Well, that was awesome. It just seems like I know we've shared some stuff with Philly guys before, and quite a few good people have come out of there in different realms. Let's refresh everyone's minds about some of the reasons why you'll be entering the Hall of Fame in October. You coached the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. I'm a proud alum to the NCAA Division III national titles in 1991, 95, 98, and 99.
at the University of Wisconsin. You were part of 14 consecutive NCAA tournament appearances, which culminated, as we said earlier, in 2 NCAA D1 Final Fours in 14 and 15, and that runner-up finish in 2015. Along the way, you collected numerous Coach of the Year awards. Our sponsors, and I always have to remind myself to talk about our sponsor here. Buck and Honey's is racking up numerous awards for their successful restaurants throughout the Madison area, with locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. So I want to talk about that national championship game, and as much as I would love to pick your brain, we've already talked about this a little bit before, but all of the notes and things about the game, there's really something that I think would probably benefit our Survive and Thrive theme here about how you came through after that game. Tough situation, and I'll let you talk a little bit more about that. But some of the notes I have here, you had some really nice players back that season. Frank the Tank Kaminsky, the Naismith Men's College Basketball Player of the Year, Sam Decorah, Josh Gosser, Nigel Hayes, Bronson Koenig, and some other solid contributors. I love those Wisconsin kids on that team that year. Probably one of the few teams that had a bunch of Wisconsin kids. The national championship game 2015 was played at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, Indiana, with a crowd of 71,000 in attendance and over 28 million watching at home. I'm always impressed with those numbers. I thought when I played in high school state championship game, there was 11,500 at the UW Fieldhouse. That pales in comparison to 71,000. Did it seem like it was 71,000 there, Coach?
Well, you know how coaches are. Once you get into the building, get on the floor, everything else is just erased. And it's just you and your players, your coaches, you're working the officials, you're trying to get angles, there's too many things you're keeping track of mentally to even ever think about the noise. And don't forget Douye on that list of guys who really helped us. He came in off the bench in that 2015 season because of his defense, his rebounding. He really spelled Sam Decorah quite a bit. So it was one of those games where you feel you had a chance, you're in it. If things go this way or that way, I keep hearing from a lot of people about this call, that call. I just can't live my life that way. We just came up short, and there's a lot of times we won games just to get there to that national championship game, where the other team maybe thought some of the same things happened. So you take advantage of what you have, and when it doesn't happen, what you do is you chalk up the experience and understand that you're going to have a job where somebody's going to tell you you're not very good and maybe move you out of that business or give you a pink slip, so to speak. There are pitfalls in life, and whether they happen in a sporting event or whether they happen in everyday life, out in the real world, so to speak, you have to deal with it, and it's what you do when you get up. First of all, you got to get up, and then just get ready for what's next. And you know me, I always had that sign next in my office, so in big letters, really big letters, because there always will be a next.
Yeah, what's kind of interesting is out of those 28 million and the 71,000 there, of those people, the Badger fans were probably wondering, just like I was at home, Coach has got to be so angry, and this has got to be bugging him. And see, we really don't know from a fan's perspective. I mean, I probably maybe know a little bit more because I played the game, but just the general fan has no idea. And you really put it into a good context in that you just keep playing the game, and they had a run, you had a run, and the game isn't lost because they cut. You were up. Well, you were tied at 31 apiece at halftime, and at about the 13-minute mark, Frank hits a I think it was it scored a bucket inside to make it 48-39, and Duke calls a timeout, and then Grayson Allen decides to come onto the scene, and he scores, I think, the next 8 points, a couple three-pointers, a three-pointer and a three-point play, and things seemed to not go our way the last 13 minutes.
There are some people that say it a lot stronger than that.
Well, we try to keep it PG here, Coach.
Yeah,
so,
I understand.
So yeah, that things just kind of went. There was a couple of situations where the especially I think it was under 4 minutes to go. The Winslow kid travels first, hops on 1 foot, and then steps on that same foot out of bounds. There's the play where Bronson goes to the basket, assaulted by three or four Blue Devils, and then the ball gets knocked out of bounds. And 28 million people, including the 3 guys that were announcing the game, said, that's Wisconsin's ball. You could see the ball spinning in the air, and then Winslow appears again, and he tips the ball, and the 3 officials said we couldn't see anything. So
unfortunately, a lot of people out there know exactly what you're talking about because they'll never forget it. But you need to. You need to move past that. My wife Kelly has not moved past that yet, but I think in the next 5 years, I think she'll move on. But what happened was the tone of what was a charge and what was not a charge and what was totally different than the first half. And then what you do is when the game's over, you're in the locker room, you talk about what a great year it was. What you guys did was so powerful for the university and what it brought to the university as far as recognition and, hey, those guys at Wisconsin can play some basketball, people started to say. And so, from there, what you do is you need to build off that success. You need to build off that. The next couple of years, we get to the Sweet 16. Greg Gard and his staff did a great job. A bucket here, a turnover there. Of course, they could have been in the Final Four. And then, of course, we're hit with COVID and everything. So as far as college basketball is concerned, when you have a tough game like we had for the national championship, or to go to the Final Four, or to get into the NCAA tournament, there's so many crucial games where you got to come out on top. So in 2015, we had a great regular season, and took that crown, and then the Big Ten tournament. Wow. I don't know if people remember those 3 games, or at least 2 of them, were really, really good games. And then you're into the NCAA tournament. So, and we all know how anything can happen in that. Very, very seldom does the number 1 team end up winning. And we were fortunate enough to beat a Kentucky team that was undefeated. And I know our fans and our alumni, all that, we're very proud of that, and proud of these young men. And I just think it's a memory that they'll never forget. But they can't. It's not for the reason that because it didn't come out the way they wanted or it was something negative. What they ought to feel is put your chest out and say, hey, I had a chance to play in the national championship game. And take pride in that.
I think if somebody were to mention to you or any of the players that you're going to make it in the national championship game and you're going to lose by, 68-63, how many hands would go up in that locker room before? I know my hand would go up.
There's a lot of teams that have never had that opportunity. Yeah, you're right. It's a hard spot to get to.
I know you had mentioned earlier that Kelly hasn't gotten over it. I'm still in counseling, Coach, from that particular game. So, after the game, there was there were probably some feelings of disappointment, sadness, anger. Did any of that enter your mind? I know it entered my mind. I was probably disappointed for my real tie with the team is obviously you and Bronson. I was pretty disappointed for you guys for not coming out on top. But what entered your mind after that particular game in the next week, or was it, hey, you got to move on?
Oh, it's a part of life. It's the ups and downs. It's not as if those players that were on the court had never had disappointment before. And they had some tough loss. A lot of those guys lost in high school championship games, and they bounced back from that. They got to college, and then they had some really good games and really great experiences and learned something. That was the most important thing. What's getting lost now with NIL and everything else, who's ever talking about GPAs and getting degrees where they can go get good jobs? After that game, we still had finals coming up later. We still had to get our GPAs and advance in classes and graduate and do all that. So the clock never stopped. And of course, we know what happens when it does. But as long as that clock keeps moving, there's always another challenge out there for these guys or anybody else that's ever tried to do anything and maybe didn't reach the top, but they at least got up the ladder to a certain point where they made advancements. It improved them. And that whole basketball experience for that team and every other team I've ever coached that I know of gained something from those hours of conditioning, which people never see. And because you had to go through the conditioning that I required. Nobody out-hustled us. Nobody outworked us, and nobody was in better shape than our players. And that you can control. Now, you can't control all the time your shooting percentage, a call here or there. You can't always control that. But what you can do is you can prepare. So if that was the end of your basketball career as far as college was concerned, like it was for several of our seniors, there's a lot more challenges out there in life, and there's a lot more that you can accomplish, and you can accomplish those things based on the fact of what you learned playing a college sport. And I say that for volleyball players, it's for a study break. Remember I used to practice that at times? Hey, it's a study break, guys. And you have to move on. You have to get ready for what's next. And I think our guys have done that.
Yeah, I think our listeners can also benefit from just some of the things you just said there. Yeah, you could have probably sulked and been upset, disappointed that whole next week. But yeah, everybody had to get up and maybe go to school that Tuesday morning you got back, or Wednesday or whatever, and start preparing for exams. So yeah, for today's episode, our remote studios here on the west side of Madison facilitate the fun, ensure each guest has a memorable experience at a great value. It's those memorable experiences that keep driving people back, with 4 locations in Sun Prairie, Monona, Wanakee, and Mount Horeb. They're easy to get to. Sounds like the memorable experiences we're going to share here in a little bit. You and I are going to share about 1991 NCAA championship, your first. So we're gonna press pause here for a little bit, and we'll catch you.
Fun time.
All right, we're back for our second section, Section 2, 1991 NCAA championship, part of this Survive and Thrive 87-91, brought to you by Buck and Honeys. That 91 is a special number, so I like that. I like that number. Your first NCAA championship, UW-Platteville's first opportunity to play in the Division III tournament. Prior to that year, Platteville had been in NAIA, and then we made that switch. That might be for another episode as well, making that switch from NAIA to Division III. But championship game, we had UW-Platteville 27-3 versus Franklin and Marshall 28-2. Kind of an epic battle there. You got 55 wins and only 5 losses between the two teams. That year's Final Four was played in Springfield, Ohio at Wittenberg University. UW-Platteville came off a hard-fought 96-94 win over Otterbein in the semifinals, and Franklin and Marshall rolled in their semifinal, setting up that Saturday night title game. Franklin and Marshall, the Diplomats, were led by Coach Glenn, and I put in my notes, not the big dog Robinson, Glenn Robinson. When he retired, this guy was a legend, was the Division III leader, and I think is still the Division III leader in coaching wins with 967 wins. And that alone ranks him as the number 6th all-time in college basketball history. That would be men's. Quite the accomplishment. I'm wondering right now, why Coach Robinson isn't being mentioned for the Naismith Hall of Fame. I don't know if you want to touch on that.
Well, you gave his total, but you didn't say that he started when he was 12 years old as a head
Player coach.
Glenn is, how would you like to be a coach who gets to the national championship game in 1991 against a team from your home state, coached by somebody from your hometown area 7 miles apart? Glenn Robinson and I grew up 7 miles from each other, just outside of South Philly. And he was from Lansdowne, and myself being from Chester. Here we meet for the national championship. So when you mention, we'll talk about how we went Division III. George Chris came into my office, the former AD, who has since passed away at Platteville. Came in and says, Coach, here's what I'm going to do. They raised the dues in NAIA. I'm just wondering how you feel. I'm going to come to you first because I feel it's important that you have a say in this. Would you rather be Division III or be NAIA? I said, I don't coach for the trophy, George. Whatever you think is best for the institution, but if they're doubling the dues and we're paying dues to NCAA Division III, because we didn't have any scholarships, and there are NAIA schools that did and didn't. And I said, Coach, whatever's best for the budget, I'll go along with it. I'm not, like I said, I'm not coaching for the trophy. So he went back to his office and he said he made the phone call and he says, we're going strictly Division III because it made sense. Because we weren't given any scholarships. So that was our first year. Your senior year was our first year in NCAA Division III. So we didn't quite know what to expect because we hadn't been in that division. But we knew Whitewater was, and we knew Whitewater had won. And we had beaten Whitewater, so we always felt that we could compete at any of those levels. But as far as the getting in the tournament and getting some home games, that was really neat because the crowds were crazy. The students were really into it. And we set a couple records. Little did we know that we would play a team and beat them by 60 points when I played everybody. Should I tell them you probably played more than usual? Or no, I
Oh, yeah. No, yeah. No, I think I will get to that.
So, here we are. We make a splash. And then we won the other game by like almost 50. So we were feeling good about the position we were in. But boy, once we got to the Final Four, the competition stepped up quite a bit. But in regards to Coach Robinson, as you said, opposed to the player, he went to Westchester State, and he was a good friend of the guy I grew up with and still talk to 5 times a week. And he's in the Small College Hall of Fame, just so you know.
Okay.
That was a no-brainer. And as far as getting into the Naismith Hall of Fame, by me being selected, I've been receiving a lot of calls about a lot of coaches who they would like me to lobby for. So I'm not gonna say here what I think of his chances or anything else because it's not fair. There's some other coaches out there in Division III that, to me, deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. And of course, the Hall of Fame doesn't define your coaching career, but it is something that says you had a time period where you were able to help X number of young men through a process that ended up being positive. So being in the Hall of Fame just says, hey, make sure you thank everybody that put you there. And you know I've done that. But anyhow, Glenn's a heck of a coach. He has a former player, Tim, that's now an NBA head coach that you played against. That's two coaches now that Platteville beat.
Yep.
That are NBA coaches, because Nick Nurse played at Northern Iowa when we beat them in 1987.
Yep.
Excuse me. And also Greg McDermott was on that team, who's one heck of a coach, great guy. So there's some pretty good genes running through those teams that we played. And obviously, when you mention about Otterbein in the semifinals, they had a young man who started at Ohio State and left and ended up...
James Bradley.
James Bradley ended up... I tried to forget his name. He lit us up. And fortunately, Sean Freisen made a big play at the end, and we were able to get to the finals. But Platteville, in their first year in Division III, sent a message.
Yeah, speaking of you thanking your players, I do want to make mention of some pretty good seniors on that team that year. So the Pioneers were led by seniors Robbie Jeter, Del Brazil, Sean Freisen, Sean Poole, with contributions by Mike Jones and yours truly.
Yours truly. not me, you.
Yes, not you, me. Jeter and Freisen would make the all-tournament team that year, with Freisen, Fry taking home the most outstanding player award. Let's go back a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about the season, maybe one or two items that make you think about that season?
Well, I thought, to me, any place where I coached, I always figured any job that I took was in a league that if you can compete in that league, you can compete with anybody in the country. So Eau Claire and Point and Whitewater, I said when I first went to Platteville, if we can compete with them, we can play with anybody in the nation. I didn't worry about the other parts of the country or other leagues or anything else. Take care of your own league first. Same thing when I took the job at UWM. You know, my last game at Butler, we lose in double overtime, and I knew we had reached for that next year would have been pretty good. And we all know UWM went on to win a lot of games with the players that we left them, because that's where we were headed, and that's what we were supposed to do, because it's a job and that's what you're paid for. And they always let you know if you're not doing the job. So,
Yeah.
But anyhow, we get, to me, I always just felt that if, like in high school, I was in one of the toughest conferences in the state of Pennsylvania. I coached in one of the toughest areas in Pennsylvania. So fortunately for me, I was always in the arena of success, of really good teams, of teams that won championships.
Good competition.
Good competition, for sure.
So was there a point during that season, 1990-91, when did you think that this team could potentially win it all? Was there a point?
But I never thought about that. You know, that's not how I think, because I'm always thinking game to game. I'm always thinking, one step at a time. But I really felt some of those road wins that we had. If you can win in hostile environments in our conference, Wisconsin Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, of course it wasn't called that then, but we won't say the other initials. So, but it really, I just always felt that if we could get by the Whitewaters, Eau Claires, and La Crosses, and Points, and the rest of them, that we could play with people nationally and do it without any money being offered to the players. The players did it out of just wanting to continue to compete, wanted to stay in shape, wanted to, continue a dream of trying to see what you could do at the next level. And that's exactly what the guys did. And the way we played, especially in that national championship game, because you had mentioned about how was there at any point in that game where I felt we had it, and there was. And I turned around, I looked at my folks, I looked at Kelly and the section they were in and the Platteville section, and I just turned and looked and just stared while somebody was going to the free throw line. And I knew it. I looked behind me, and here's Todd Kukan, my first assistant, who had recruited Robbie Jeter and Sean Freisen and Del Brazil and Sean Poole. And he's in tears. He's got, his shirt is wet, and it wasn't from perspiration. It was from tears. He was so happy. And then, 30 seconds later, the buzzer sounds, and we're the national champions. And I was so happy for you guys. And my rule is anytime there's a championship won, the seniors always get the trophy. And there's a great picture of the six of you accepting that trophy.
Yeah, as you're going through that, I remember standing up on the bench and going through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I've got that visual of the film crew as we're all running out on the floor, and it was really pretty cool. I mean, at least, and I mentioned this a couple of times, being able to say that you won your last college game is really, there's not very many people. There's only one team that gets to say that in Division III, Division II, Division I. So that's pretty cool. After that season, you would go on to win 3 more Division III national titles in 95, 98, and 99. It was quite a run. Those 2 teams, 95 and 98 teams, were undefeated. So with all that success after that first title, I think the listeners that get an opportunity to do something and then it turns them into somebody else. Some people don't handle success, and you're one of those people that seem to handle success better than anybody I've ever run into. How did you manage to stay the same person from 84 to 91 to 95 to 2010 to 2015? How did you manage to stay pretty even keel?
You wouldn't ask that question if you hung around with my wife for a day or two. I think it's a pretty simple answer. It was always about family. We got to do this, we got to do that. Especially at Platteville, people. It really upsets me sometimes when I think about how they talk about people and everybody was always poor. Well, I'm not saying we were poor, Tim, but Kelly ran the household on a pretty tight budget because the state university system is not known for extravagant salaries, or we made the best of what we had. The reason I'm saying that is that it kept me focused on, okay, now we don't want to lose this. I want to coach. I could have coached at Platteville for 40 years. But I just said, okay, let's make phone calls and recruiting. Let's do this. Let's do that. So as soon as the season was over, it was always, okay, we got to get ready for the next year. And by the way, how many people know or remember that we went back to the Final Four in 92, the year after we won the first championship? But you guys set the stage for something pretty special in college basketball. There's no record of, in the same decade, no school has ever won, had the winning percentage that UW-Platteville had. Division I, Division II, or Division III, NAI, whatever. And I think, you guys should take a lot of pride in that, as well as the first group that we recruited in '84, with Thiessen and Kazin and Ripley and so many. See, once I start saying these guys, Rock Ripley and this guy and that guy,
Showalter and
oh yeah, Steve Showalter. He wasn't, but he was an NAIA. He became an NAIA All-American.
Brian Call,
Absolutely. He was big in that game when we beat Northern Iowa at Northern Iowa, but the tradition started. And when I say tradition, like, we can win, we can be successful if we just do this, 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 and this. So all the things that we did with conditioning, there is no team that was in better condition than you guys were at Platteville. At Wisconsin, the same thing with the hill running, pool workouts, weight room workouts, and plyometrics and every other drill that we could think of. We wanted to make sure that you guys were physically ready, mentally ready, weren't going to quit easily, and were able to handle the tough times as well as, the good times. And that's a trait that I don't think people spend enough time studying, is finding people who can handle both and still come out with the energy and the focus and everything that you need to compete. And you guys certainly set that tone in '91 when we won the whole thing.
Yeah, I tell you what, Coach, there's people paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of the stuff you just talked about, and all of those things that you talked about, conditioning, which would be in the business world or teaching or wherever, would be preparation, getting ready, and then
read, study.
Yep, yeah. Studying and then just
ask questions,
stay in the course, and then when your calendar year is over, you maybe took some losses. You might have been in the red, but now you got to get ready for next year. You can't live in the past. So I think that's something that anybody can take away from. So just going to put a little bow on this one here. Pardon the pun, Coach Ryan.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's cute.
So we had two polar opposites today in the episode. Feelings of maybe not necessarily Coach Ryan, but maybe mine as a player. One of disappointment and losing, and then in that first segment, and then certainly winning the championship game. Two situations that give real meaning, and I think you gave some real meaning to surviving, and then it led to, again, thriving the next year and the next year, and you really had an awesome system there. And then despite success and disappointment, you've been able to stay this even-keeled, level-headed person. And I think you also touched on a family thing there where, hey, I'm home now, and it's home time, and it's with the kids and with the grandkids, and with Kelly, your wife, of when I come through those doors, I'm not coach anymore. I'm a family man, and we're going to do family things because that's just the next thing you have to do. So on our next episode from the Buck and Honey's remote studios, we'll talk about a couple of memorable stories. And again, I mentioned that we were going to have Coach Ryan on until his induction in the Hall of Fame because of the stories that you tell, and I think they need to be told, have some tremendous meaning. The first is the recruitment of a very good player, and we won't mention who that player's name is, to the University of Wisconsin in the mid-'80s. A lot of those stories that you told about that, Coach, are pretty cool. And then the legend of the Philly roll, that my wife and I, Sarah and I, use that to this day. So I don't know if you want to. No, we won't let the cat out of the bag, will we?
You can tease him with that. That's fine.
Yeah, just get some $100. It starts with a $100 bill, and then we'll fill in the blanks next time. So those will definitely have some connection to survive and thrive. So again, Coach Ryan, thanks for your storytelling. Again, like I tell people, if I'm here and if I were in that anxious mode, Coach, you would have taken me out of that for the last 45 minutes of just sitting here listening to you talk about stories and talk about how you've been successful, and I was listening. I was checked out of everything else that went on today, and I was just here. So thanks for that.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's always nice to talk to an ex-player who's still talking to me. You know, there's probably some guys that think I kept them from the NBA. Did you ever?
Yeah. Well, we'll
If
we
Coach
might.
Ryan would have played me more. If Coach Ryan would have done this. Well.
Yeah, we might touch on that one a little
Because I
later.
might say that about Coach Rainey. You know, maybe I could have been in the NBA. No.
Yeah.
Instead, I hired him as my assistant.
And which was a good move.
my
And
former
by
coach.
the way, Coach Rainey will be one of the episodes we'll talk about the Rain Man. So we'll get to that as well. So
There's only one,
there's only one.
and there'll only be one.
Thanks.